It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. The law says if you come to this country and want asylum, you have to ask for it in your first year. For decades, people who did that were left alone while they waited. The application was proof you were doing it the right way. Not anymore. Last July, ICE issued a memo taking away the right of many of these people to ask a judge to let them out on bond. And attorneys here say something else changed alongside it. Agents started showing up at the homes and workplaces of people with applications pending. People whose only offense is waiting in a line that takes years. The numbers here are steep. ICE arrested 85 people in Michigan in January of last year. This January, it was 477. And of everyone arrested in the state over that stretch, fewer than a quarter had a criminal conviction. Over the next hour, we'll hear from 3 people who live inside these changes: an immigration attorney, a woman who was detained, and a pastor watching it move through his congregation. We asked ICE's Detroit field office to respond. It has not yet done so. Kevin Piecuch is an immigration attorney and executive director of the Southwest Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Center. That's a free legal clinic. Kevin, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you, Robyn.
You've been an immigration attorney for a long time. I'm wondering, what's the single biggest thing that's different right now about who gets detained?
Sure. The change you described in the introduction is, for me, the biggest change. Prior to the last 2 years, persons who had filed an asylum application, which meant they were asking for protection, fleeing from hardship in their own country, from persecution, and the U.S. gave them, our government gave them the space to find a work permit, to live here peacefully while their application was being considered. And I've learned through my experience that it can take years and years and years before the application is considered. If one enters on a visa, it could be as long as 8 or 9 years through the asylum office. If they are detained at the border, if they enter without a visa, they are put into the immigration court proceedings, and those typically move faster, but there's still a delay, often 2 to 3 years before their cases are ever adjudicated. During that time, my clients always had the opportunity to live. Their kids could be in school, they could get work permits, and they could work. But that all changed when our government decided that persons with pending asylums lacked status and could be picked up at any time, and in fact were specifically targeted because they did not have a visa. And that is not their fault. It's not their fault that there's a long line to consider their applications, that it takes so long to adjudicate them, but yet they are now being asked to sometimes give up their liberty because our government cannot process these applications quickly enough.
So someone applies for asylum in their first year, like the law says, and they wait, and asylum is supposed to protect them, essentially, and allow them to live a life while they're waiting, to move through society like any person would do in the U.S. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. You don't have a permanent status while it's pending, but the government allowed us to get work permits. They could get Social Security cards, driver's licenses, and lead a normal life. One interesting change that happened as a result of the big new beautiful bill is even when they receive asylum, it used to be that persons who received asylum, who won their asylum case, automatically were eligible for public benefits. The big new beautiful bill said, no, not anymore. Even people who had the permanent status of winning their asylum claim, who had maybe applied for a green card, while their green cards are pending, as of October, all of the public benefits for people waiting for their green cards, because that's a long line as well, they are not going to be able to get them, which means our government is putting barriers. We are supposed to be a welcoming country. People who have suffered were given the opportunity to live here, and now it seems as if we're putting all sorts of barriers to discourage people from seeking our protection.
So in 9 weeks, a provision in last year's reconciliation bill cuts off Medicaid for refugees and for people who won their asylum cases but don't have a green card yet. Am I getting that right?
That's right. And it used to be if they had filed for a green card, having a receipt proving that they had applied for it, they would be able to get the benefits. But now it doesn't matter. They're being, again, held responsible for the fact that USCIS is taking 2-3 years to process green card applications.
All of this has me wondering, Kevin, what does the legal path to citizenship actually look like nowadays?
Sure. So if a person is seeking asylum, a person is allowed to, and let's say they win their case, they persuade a judge or they persuade an asylum officer to grant them asylum. That person must stay in that status for a year after the grant. Once the year has passed, they can apply for a green card for permanent residency. And so 1 year post-asylum, you can apply. There's usually an interview or some sort of a waiting period, but that's taking now 2, 3, maybe even 4 years for a green card. Once you apply for a green card, you have 5 years after the date they receive your application, you're eligible to apply for naturalization. So the whole process from beginning to end, it really depends on how long the asylum application is adjudicated. If it takes a long time, their path to citizenship is lengthened. But once they have their green card, it moves more quickly.
Okay, and what you're saying, though, is that path to citizenship has now lengthened so much, and the barriers along that path have grown to be insurmountable for some people.
Yeah, for some people, it's exceptionally difficult. And again, that process of getting a green card, which used to happen very quickly, is now taking years and years and years. And while our government cuts people working at the USCIS office, there are fewer people who are actually going through these applications. It just makes the line and the wait go longer. Oh, and these are not free. So everyone that applies for a green card, they pay a fee of $1,040 just to file their application. So all these applications cost money. To get a work permit, to have the permission to work, they pay a fee of $560. Plus, every year their asylum application is pending, they now pay a fee of $100.
I mean, I think we have to put that into perspective because the U.S. is a rich country, and you're talking about folks who are coming from countries where maybe they've been making a couple dollars a day.
Sure.
And so the amount of money that you're talking about in order to gather that money, to invest that money, that is a big ask. And then for it to go nowhere for years and years sounds like quite the hardship.
Oh, it's a terrible hardship. And again, these fees were changed in the last 2 years. So prior to 2 years ago, the first work permit was free. To file an asylum application was free. There was no fee. And even the green card applications have more than doubled in price. So all of these charges have been recently added to make the burden even more and more difficult.
When we talk about folks who are getting detained right now, is this something that you're seeing more regularly? I mean, how often does someone walk into your clinic with a detained husband or daughter or friend?
Yeah, it's unprecedented. In the years that I've been working in immigration law, I have never seen the amount of people that come in regarding detained people. On average, we see about 200 client visits a week in our legal clinics. A quarter of all the people who come in, 25%, which is 40 people, usually come in regards to a detained friend or loved one. I've never seen that many people. And the process has become more difficult as well. The bonds that are being charged, even if we convince a judge to let the person out on bond, the bonds themselves are astronomical.
I mean, you told me they're thousands of dollars. So when someone is detained, you're now in federal court filing petitions just to get them a hearing. Even when you win, families are faced with the bonds that are thousands of dollars to get the person out. A retired immigration judge, Lawrence Berman, a Republican, nearly 30 years on the bench, said a lot of this is meant to get people to just give up and self-deport, and that he's never seen anything like it, which mirrors what you're saying. Do you agree with that, that this is meant to get people to give up and self-deport?
Well, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I might be skeptical, but never in my career have I had people come to me and say, you know what, I'm giving up on the process. I just want to leave. So I have had people every week come and ask to self-deport. And this never before happened to me. So I'm seeing this regularly. This is a brand new phenomenon. And I think because the process has become so hard, so onerous, and so in some ways menacing that people just don't want to endure it.
Kevin, what do you say to them you are not just an attorney, you are a counselor.
Sure.
You are someone who is advising folks often who are in very difficult situations. What do you say to someone when they say, I have to give up and I have to self-deport?
Well, the thing I often say, which it just pains me to say this, is you are not a prisoner of the United States government. If what you are enduring is too much, then by all means, do what is best for you and what is best for you and your family. If you don't see hope, if you don't see a relenting of what you're going through and you feel you would be better off going back to your home country, then by all means do. And I'll do whatever I can to help you. Sometimes we can do some legal maneuverings to help them so they don't have a deportation order, and we'll do whatever we can. But ultimately, I tell people, you are not a prisoner. You can leave. You don't need permission to leave. If you want to go, we'll do what we can to help you go.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Kevin Piecuch, an immigration attorney and executive director of the Southwest Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Center. That's a free legal clinic. We've been talking about what changed for our neighbors with pending asylum applications and who gets detained now. Later this hour, we'll hear from a young woman who was detained while her asylum case was still pending. Kevin, I want to ask about something that happened in court, and I want to be upfront with listeners. This is your account. We have not seen these documents. You were at a bond docket. You say the arrest record ICE handed the judge. That's
Sure.
the document the judge uses to decide whether someone goes free. Had information in it that was flatly false. Tell me what you saw.
Yeah, this was shocking to me because when a person is detained, when an immigrant's detained, the government prepares a form, an I-213, which is a description of the arrest and the circumstances leading up to it. Now, not every person who asks for a bond hearing is able to get a lawyer. I mean, there's just not enough lawyers to go around. So they've probably never reviewed it, but this document is given to the judge who's considering bond. So as I was reading one for actually a parishioner of Pastor Casillas, who you're going to speak to later, I was reading the record and and there were things in that report that I just didn't believe to be true. The young man came in as a 16-year-old from Honduras, and when I went through the document, it said one of the things that he allegedly had admitted was that he was a member of the Mexican army. Now, I found that very strange that a 16-year-old Honduran at the border would say that he was a member of the Mexican army. So I was going to protest the document because I knew there was false information. The person who had a bond hearing immediately before me was representing a young man from Algeria. And he as well was objecting to the 213 in his case. And one of the things that he objected to was that there was an allegation that this young man from Algeria had admitted to being a member of the Mexican army. I found that my jaw dropped. How could two different people from two very different countries be alleged to have said the same thing at the border? Clearly, someone was putting information in this document that was false, that was clearly untrue.
Here's what I want listeners to understand right now. Immigration judges treat that form as presumptively reliable. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So the burden is on you to prove it's wrong. So what happens to the person standing there without you by their side, without a lawyer?
It's really hard because a lot of times there are allegations why they were picked up. The young man that Pastor Casillas knows well was alleged to have missed 7 appointments. And I talked to my client, he said, I never knew that there were appointments. I never received any notification. So there's information about the events leading up that unless there's someone who's willing to verify them or could read it and understand it, the immigration judge has nothing else to rely on but that document. And if they don't have an attorney willing to push back, they are often denied bond because they have done things allegedly that would make them ineligible for bond. So they end up staying in jail.
How much does knowing that animate you, push you forward, inspire you to keep doing this work? Because what you're saying essentially is that when folks do not have legal representation when it comes to immigration cases, oftentimes they have no shot.
Right. Absolutely. And without an advocate saying this person deserves a bond, they have strong ties to the community, and who can really animate that, they are often denied release from jail and end up having their immigration hearing, their final hearing in jail without a counselor. And 99% of the time, they lose their case and are ordered removed. And so it's the end of the road.
There are about 1.4 million pending asylum claims. As I mentioned earlier, Detroit's ICE field office did not respond to the Metro. But here's the federal government's argument, that the system has become a way to live and work here for years, whether or not a person's claim is strong. What's your answer to that?
Well, we could spend all day talking about immigration policy, and because there are many people who live in countries where they have difficult economies that are just simply looking for a chance to put bread on the table. And the only way, because we don't have a robust program for allowing things like guest workers, many people don't have an alternative. So it is true. I have people that come to my office that say, and I ask, why did you come to the United States? And I just couldn't, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't make enough money to support my family. And I have to very painfully decline taking those cases because they haven't expressed a fear related on a protected ground. But again, if a person wants to file an application, many of them do, but it's not the main driver. What happens in many cases is that many people end up having what I would call a weak claim. They experienced hardship or persecution, but it was as a result of a cartel or a gang. And those persons are usually recognized by immigration courts as private actors, and often renders that person ineligible for asylum relief. Because unless you can prove there was a government soldier or a government actor doing the persecuting, it's very hard to win asylum. I personally believe that our laws need to expand, so we take cases all the time where people experienced gang violence or cartel violence and are too afraid and the government cannot protect them. I will take that case forward. It is often a weak claim, but our asylum laws, and in many parts of the world, they would embrace those type of claims. I believe our view of asylum should be expanded, and only by taking these cases, going to immigration court, and possibly taking those appeals to federal court, can we really expand the immigration law to include everyone who suffers, who comes here.
Okay, I'm going to take the other side here again. Why is it the U.S.'s responsibility to expand immigration laws and to welcome more people here who are fleeing difficult circumstances?
Sure. So oftentimes it's just a matter of our proximity. I mean, we are the richest country in the world. We are certainly a magnet, drawing people from every country of the world, and particularly if you live in the Western Hemisphere, and you can't farm anymore because the ground is no good. You can't get a job. You can't go to school. You see this beacon of hope that the United States has always been. It's a magnet that we have portrayed to the world, and to think that people wouldn't respond to seek to come here just seems crazy to me. I thought that was why we were founded. So I believe our laws, and we certainly have the jobs. So as far as I know, I don't know anyone who was displaced because an immigrant came in and took a job. Many of the jobs that these asylum seekers take are jobs that Americans don't want to do. And it's been a tremendous hardship in some markets, in agriculture and other places, with the loss of many of their best workers. So I think it's a win-win. We get motivated people to come to the United States who want to be here, who want to make a positive impact in our country. We help secure labor in areas where we need them, and we get to be the beacon of hope that this country is always meant to be and has been.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is immigration attorney Kevin Piecuch of the Southwest Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Center. We've been describing this in the aggregate, the policy, the numbers, the pattern. When we come back, we'll meet one person it happened to, a young woman who was detained, even though she'd done everything the law asked of her. We're protecting her name, but you'll hear her story in her own voice next on the Metro. Stay with us. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Before the break, my guest, immigration attorney Kevin Piecuch, laid out how the immigration rules have changed, how a pending asylum application no longer keeps someone from being detained, and how fast that's playing out here in Metro Detroit. Now let's hear what that looks like for one person. A young woman living in the area, someone who, by the rules, was doing everything right. She was detained anyway. We're protecting her identity, so we're not using her real name. We'll call her Anna. Anna, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your life here. What were you doing before all this? What did a normal day look like for you?
Well, a normal day for me since I got here. I focus on school. I did 2 years in St. Clair County as business administration, and then I transferred to Clear University. So I will focus more on school. I wake up every day I also play soccer, so I wake up every day to get some touches at the field, and then do homework, work, and get ready for this season that's coming.
Who are you rooting for in the World Cup? Uh-oh, is it too soon to ask? Go ahead.
Actually, I was rooting for Spain. So.
You were? Okay.
Right.
You were rooting for the winner.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All my teams failed. They just, yes, miserable performance. Not miserable, I should say. But I was rooting for a lot of the Arab teams, and they tried really hard, but they just all got knocked out. So amazing that your team won. You love to play soccer. You're also focusing on your studies, business administration. What do you want to do with that?
It's still in plan since I want to, get my own business. But I'm still working on it. Let's see what.
You want to start your own business?
Yes.
What kind of business?
I would like to, bring some food from Venezuela. So I would like to start a restaurant or bakery. So.
Okay. Your favorite dish that we should all know about, what is it?
It would be the pabellon. It's a dish known from Venezuela that is one of probably the amazing food that we have over there.
Describe it if you would.
The plate, we have rice. We have some fried plantains. We have
plantains. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have the black beans. We also have the beef, smashed beef, and we have avocado.
Okay. A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Sounds delicious. I wonder if you can take me back to the day that you were arrested. Where were you when immigration agents came for you?
So that day I was going to pick up my brother at his house, and they intercept me in halfway there. There was a car in front and one car behind, so they won't let me go anywhere. They just stop me in the middle of the road, and they get off the car and they come to me in a very rude and a mean way. And they basically made me get out of my car without telling me why I was being pulled over.
What were you thinking? What was going through your mind?
So I was very mad at that moment, and I was in fear because, I feel like it wasn't right the way that they were doing that. There was no reason why they were pulling me over. Then they just say, you have to get out of your car because we are immigration officers. And I asked why, and they never gave me an answer.
So you had done what you were supposed to do. You had an asylum case pending. You were waiting. Did anyone explain to you within that time period why you were being taken? It sounds like they were giving you very little answers.
No, they did not. They never say why. What was the reason why they were doing that?
What do you want people listening, people who've never seen the inside of a detention center, to understand about what those days were like?
Well, so it was very rude because I'm coming from a country where we left Venezuela because we didn't share the same opinion that the government did, and we were waking up every day, going outside with fear because they can harm you, and I was feeling so the same way that I did in Venezuela because I was having fear for me and for my family and every other people that are going through this process. And I say, if I came here at first and I did everything and I've been doing everything right, why will they do this? If we're doing the things right, why they can't do the same?
The fear that you felt in Venezuela versus what you had been experiencing here, it was different. It was this was a different experience for you when you came here up until that moment, it sounds like. And then the fear returned when you were arrested.
Yes, because you feel like you can do anything. Like, 'cause when you in there, they won't let you do too much to help you. And there's people that it's not.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm wondering, you're out now. Are you still afraid?
Yeah, yes, I am. For me and for my family, I don't want that to happen again, and I'm very scared to be in that place again.
Who was the first person you wanted to see when you got out?
My mom, she was the first person.
What was that like?
Well, I feel like I was seeing her after years separated.
How long had it been, actually?
A month and a week.
But it felt like years.
Yeah, it did. And I was so happy to see her back. She was, it was hard for her because I'm the youngest daughter and she's my everything. I was so happy to see her. And she wasn't having a very good time, all the time that I was over there. So she was happy too.
I'm so glad that you've been reunited with her. What would you say to someone this is happening to right now?
I would say that you just be patient. Everything will get better at some point, and you have to have faith that you will get out of there and you will be in a better place soon.
Kevin, I want to turn back to you for a moment. Anna's younger. How often are you seeing clients who are a bit younger, who are finding themselves slipping through the cracks of the immigration system like this?
Far more often than I ever had before. So Anna is typical of a significant portion, maybe 25% of all the people we see who are detained are people probably under the age of 25.
And this is new.
It's new. And there are also teenagers being put in detention as well. So we have represented teens as well.
What are you gathering from the young clients that you're working with, like Anna, when it comes to the experience of being detained? What has that been like for others you've spoken with?
Well, I do know that the experience is different depending on sometimes the country of origin and the race and ethnicity of the persons involved. So for young African descended folks, they have reported to me a bias against black people in jail, and they are often ostracized and have harsher treatment. Some of those who are Latinos have a better experience simply because there are many people like them and they find some camaraderie there. Nobody likes being in detention, but those who are able to find friends or companionship do better than those who are isolated and blamed and they experience special hardships.
I mean, we've heard a lot of complaints about what the conditions are like, and I'm speaking specifically about the North Lake Detention Facility, which is the largest immigration detention facility in the Midwest, issues with the food. I'm wondering, back to you, Anna, were conditions for you okay?
They were not. Food, and there's a place where there's a lot of noises all around the day, so you can barely sleep. There are also some situations that happen in there it makes like a place where you don't want to be anymore.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. We're spending the hour on immigration enforcement in Metro Detroit, the sharp rise in detentions and what it's doing to people who are following the rules. We've heard from an attorney and from someone who was detained. Now the view from inside a church. Pastor Kevin Casillas, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You pastor the First Latin American Baptist Church in Southwest Detroit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
When one of your congregants is detained, what does that do to the rest of the church?
Wow, it's heartbreaking from our faith perspective. I mean, we believe as a Baptist congregation that the church is a body. So our scripture teaches us about each person being like a body part. So it's like experiencing an amputation, having a part of you cut off completely, or worse, the death of a family member, because it's someone, in our case, a smaller family church, to have somebody removed and detained. It is a very sad and hurtful experience.
Pastor Casillas, there's a long history of churches as places of refuge. In January of last year, the government rescinded the policy that kept ICE out of sensitive locations like churches and schools and hospitals. Some churches have won court protection, many haven't. So let me ask you, is your church still a safe place? Can ICE walk in?
I'm not sure how to answer that question because I don't want to seek them to have a reason to come.
Yeah.
But I guess I should explain a little bit of the history of our congregation. We've been in the community for 96 years. I mean, the church, not me, obviously, but the church has seen a lot in its history in terms of different approaches to immigration. We began in 1930 when the original massive deportation efforts of the so-called repatriation of Mexican immigrants in the community took people and threw them into trains to ship them back to Mexico, and yet the community continued, our church continued, and this pendulum back and forth, we've seen that several times in history, although this is a unique time that we're living in. But our church has always been a church that has reached its neighbors, a refuge for immigrants in the community, and because that's a part of our faith. Our faith is one that calls people from all background to know Christ, to be a part of his body. And Paul would even say, Jew, Gentile, and even barbarians, the so-called barbarians, the ones who spoke a different language, were those who were invading, not assimilating into the Roman culture. We believe that there's hope for everyone, and so we communicate that message of hope to everyone in our community. And I believe that families continue to come. I know at the beginning when the administration began this approach, there were many churches whose attendance dropped. People live in fear in Southwest Detroit. People live with great anxiety that the experience of Anna becomes the experience of their children or of themselves. And they have many fears, and yet we believe that ultimately our faith and the hope that we have in God and something transcendent above all these circumstances can provide a solid foundation for their life. So people began to return, and they still come, and because they believe, and I would as well, that there is something that provides hope and encouragement, not only in our faith in God, but also in that family relationship with others. So there's that communal support and love that we have one for another as followers of Christ that I think continue to draw people to the congregation and to our worship services and activities in spite of that fear and anxiety.
I mean, this is a really challenging picture that you're painting here, though, Pastor Casillas, because in times of crisis, many people do want to look to a higher power, and they want that community and that support that they can receive, let's say, when they're going to church. And at the same time, folks are living in fear and not leaving their homes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of crises in the world. There's been a lot of crises in history, and I think faith, and in our case, faith in Christ, has provided a support. And you think of COVID days and all that happened during COVID, and so in many ways we may have to change our approach to going and visiting the families, providing support. Change the ways that we meeting in homes rather than the public worship service.
Are you doing that a lot more?
We have started some small groups, and I guess the difference has been in like the practical help. So, supporting the families that have a detained family member. Okay, how can we support a 9-year-old child now who's with a relative without his mom, who every time you mention his mom just begins bawling because she's detained by immigration. How can we connect them to resources like Mr. Piecuch at the legal services, or a therapist in their local public school, or help the family with food, going to the family, providing food assistance and other assistance to pay these exorbitant amount of fees for applications, for bond. How can we gather around them and support them in practical ways? We continue to have our normal worship times, and we provide transportation. At times, the help is providing transportation for those that don't want to drive, to be able to attend. So there's a different approach, perhaps, in terms of doing ministry, but the ministry continues.
I want to make sure that we don't speed over that. I mean, you're describing a small family church now carrying something much heavier. Bond money, rides to court, hiding no one but helping everyone. I mean, how has the job of being a pastor changed for you?
Well, in my personal case, it's an opportunity for my own growth, right? So to put deeper roots in who I know God is, and promises of His Word, and what my calling is about. I think it's just a part of what God calls us to in that particular context, in an urban ministry that ministers to migrant workers and immigrant community, I should say, to walk with them. I think it's a part of the calling that we have. So, yeah, it's on the human level. Yeah, it's hard. It's challenging. There's some very difficult days when everything just seems to pile up. Another immigration case. Another family with this type of need, and where we're going to get the funds, where we're going to get the money to help out. But God has been faithful in providing, and He gives us strength that He promises every day as we look to Him.
I mean, when you say, another immigration case, I'm wondering how much the subject of immigration enforcement has taken up the bandwidth essentially of the church and your congregants. Like, how top of mind is this right now for your congregation?
Well, I think for a large part of the congregation, whether one has papers or not, I mean, I think it does provide a lot of fear and anxiety. So it takes up a large bandwidth in that sense of what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next month. Are these families still going to be with us? Is this family member still going to be with us? So in that case, yes, it does. It is like a constant thing on their mind. For us as a congregation, as a church serving, we do what we can. I mean, we trust in God. We work, we sacrifice, and that we rely a lot on our faith and the promises of Christ that He will provide grace for each day, sufficient to the need. But yeah, at some days it does seem like there's a lot on the plate, and we just, with His strength, persevere to continue to help and show love to people.
Last week, 2 pastors in Texas, a married couple with valid religious worker visas, waiting on their green cards, said they were detained and pressured to sign voluntary departure papers. Immigration agents raised the possibility of separating them from their 3 U.S. citizen children. They refused. When one of your people is sitting in Baldwin and someone slides a form across the table, I mean, what do you tell them?
I tell them they need to talk to their lawyer. I mean,
To Kevin Piecuch.
yes, or the wonderful people on his staff. Great team here in Southwest Detroit helping our community. I tell them, we're praying for you. We'll continue to support you. I can't give you legal advice, but I wouldn't sign anything that you don't read and don't read with the lawyer. And that particular case hits home because if you allow me,
Please.
We're an evangelical church. We believe in the Bible, and at times we're so conflicted by the fact that there are so many with the same faith persuasions that have just supported, without qualification, these types of efforts to get rid of our neighbors, and in our case, fellow members of the body of Christ that have been with our community for decades. And to hear of this couple, a pastor and his wife, I read the article and saw that they were going to go to an evangelism training at the Billy Graham Center. And that's at the airport is where they were stopped by immigration. It's just such a contradiction of our beliefs, and it just saddens me so much that there have been so many of people like myself with the same beliefs that have just turned their back on so many neighbors in the community, and I believe, hurt the cause that we're called to have to show God's love, to point to His message in Christ, by an approach that is just so anti-gospel and anti-God's love. It's just really, I feel very conflicted in hearing that story, and I wanted to comment on that because it just grieves me so much that is occurring. And again, these are people that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. These are people that are following the law. So all that was promised with this administration to evangelicals and Christians, the promises have not been kept. They're not focusing on the criminals and rapists and gang members. No, they're focusing on people who follow the law to apply for their asylum case. They're focusing on people that attend your churches, my churches, that have been serving in the church for 3 decades. They're focusing on a pastor with a religious visa. And again, they may have a different way of viewing this, but again, from our perspective, in my case, I'm not getting my news from Fox or Newsmax. I'm getting my information from the reality of people in my church and those that I love and care about, to what's really happening in their lives that sometimes is not covered on so many news outlets. And I'm so glad that you're talking about this.
Pastor Casillas, I want to end on this note. You used the phrase to me earlier, spiritual grit. What does that look like in your church right now on a Sunday?
Yeah, we're a Detroit church, so Detroit knows something about grit and resilience. As I mentioned, our church has been here for 96 years. We've seen this pendulum swung from one end to another end. And, we do what we're supposed to do. We keep on helping people, loving people, sacrificing, serving people, pointing them to the hope in Christ. That's what we're called to do. And ultimately, our strength is in what God provides for us and what His promises and who He is. But that perseverance ultimately comes from Him. But this is our part of our calling as a Detroit urban church in an immigrant community to continue that resilience and helping our neighbors.
Pastor Kevin Casillas leads the First Latin American Baptist Church in Southwest Detroit. Kevin Piecuch is an immigration attorney and director of the Southwest Detroit Immigrant and Refugee Center. And our thanks to our third guest for her courage in sharing her story. It's the Metro on WDET. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. First-person accounts, like the ones we heard this hour. The pursuit of the truth, difficult topics, difficult questions. Those are the things we strive to bring you every day on the Metro. We only know if we're succeeding, though, if you tell us. The annual listener survey is out now. It's anonymous and helps shape the Metro and Detroit Public Radio. You can fill it out very quickly. Just go to WDET.org/survey. That's WDET.org/survey. We'll be right back.